Hello, welcome back. We're really lucky today to be joined by Hermione Way, who in my opinion is a VIP when it comes to being a female entrepreneur. She's a real role model to everyone, and Hermione, you've been doing this for a long time and had such an exciting career. For those of you for those people watching who haven't seen any other interviews with you, could you just give us a short rundown of your career? It is amazing.
Thank you. Great to be here today. So in 2005, I started a company called newspaper.com. I also worked as a journalist for TechCrunch. So I was running around London with my camera, interviewing entrepreneurs. And I spent the last 6 years in Silicon Valley. Also as a journalist, I interviewed people like Mark Zuckerberg. I interviewed the founder of Uber when they had 6 employees, and now they have 6,000 probably. So I've had a very varied career through business, journalism, traveled all over the world, set up a vibrator company. My most recent role was head of European communications at Tinder, and now I'm working with a company called Sextoy. So a lot, I've done a lot.
A real range of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting. I guess, I mean, it's interesting as you're mentioning these names, I guess naturally networking must just have become such a natural part of your career, because you just know so many people, and I suppose from knowing them at such an early stage.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, Brian Chesky, I interviewed him when Airbnb was still in his bedroom. Not in his bedroom, but you know, the company again had 5 employees, and now they're a global brand. So you know, I've been in this time we're living in now of tech dominating the world, and these startups growing into huge international brands. And there's no recipe for success. Anyone can do it. Anyone can take a small brand and grow it. And I think that's what's really exciting.
And I suppose from your viewpoint, it is brilliant, isn't it, to be able to have seen these companies in those early stages when they were really quite random, crazy ideas. I mean, 10 years ago, if you'd have said to someone, oh, you can rent out your room to a complete stranger on the internet, they'd have looked at you and thought, whatever. And then you look at the success of Airbnb.
Yeah.
So for someone that is starting out and, you know, perhaps they feel like they've got a bit of a random, crazy idea, what would your first initial tips be to them?
I would say get on social media. The way to think about social media is that you have a newspaper that already has millions of viewers around the world, and you need to start out putting information that's relevant to your company and growing your brand in that way. Start getting out to big cities. You know, if you Google events in Los Angeles or San Francisco or London or Berlin, there are hundreds of free events every night. You can start going to these events, interviewing influencers, you know, uploading content with your iPhone. You don't have to have a professional camera. You can do all of this very, very cheaply, and that's how I would say to someone starting out to grow their brand.
So using all of your incredible experience, you've just launched Brand Accelerator. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I guess my expertise is launching startups and helping them grow into international global brands. And now I've launched a Brand Accelerator. So what that means is I help small companies grow into international brands, but I'm working with lots of different companies around the world at the moment. And really it takes you through the brand process in all verticals. So things like PR, things like event strategy, things like marketing initiatives. And it goes very detailed. So I help people with things like how to write a press release, how to get your first 5,000 followers on social media. And it's really a week by week, step by step process for 12 months that I help startups do to help them make the right marketing decisions.
And so what kind of startups have you been working with at the moment?
Oh God, everything from, I have a client in Arizona that's a property tech company called Property Simple. I'm working with Sextoy.com. I'm working with a dating site called Matchpool, a bunch of different companies, a bank called Coconut.
And then, so in your experience with these new brands, what should the key things they should be thinking about when they first start in terms of brand and really establishing that brand, apart from social media?
I think the biggest mistake people make is they think of it as a brand. I think of a brand as a human being. A brand needs to have friends, it needs to have a voice, it needs to have an opinion. And I think when you're starting out, you need to think about what your brand represents. You know, what voice is your brand going to have? Which friends is your brand going to hang out with? And I would just give it more of a human take rather than thinking of it as a 2D thing.
So an entity more than, yeah. And then so in terms of taking those, you know, these brands forward, because obviously 12 months can seem like a really short space of time, and you're talking about these massive steps. You know, do you think that in general entrepreneurs do need to start thinking bigger and actually appreciate how big things can get?
Yeah, I think right from the get-go you need to think global. You know, we live in a world that's dominated by the internet, and the internet means the world's actually getting smaller. But I have clients all over the world. The fact that I'm based in London does not matter, because everything that I'm doing is online. So I think from the get-go, you should plan to have customers all over the world. You should have a very global voice, a very global conversation.
I guess everything is so much more accessible these days, isn't it? It's a lot easier for someone to start a company in 2017 and to go global than it was even 5-10 years ago, just because of the prevalence of the internet, social media. Like you said, you are publishing potentially to a newspaper that's got millions of followers.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, as I said before, there's never been an easier time to grow a brand, to get a brand off the ground. You can use social media to build it. You can use, reach journalists very easily, get your story covered in press. And there's no, some of my favourite entrepreneurs are not technical. One of my favourite female entrepreneurs is Sophia Morris from Nasty Girl. She set up $1 billion property empire, and she claims that she doesn't know what a pitch deck is. When investors came to her and said, "Can we invest in your company? Where's your pitch deck?" She said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, how do you track your financials?" She said, "We don't. We just get it in our bank account, and that's it." But you don't have to be a genius to start a company.
And I think that's a misconception, isn't it? Definitely. I think people assume, oh, I don't fit into a certain mould. And actually, when you look around you, there are so many different entrepreneurs in so many different shapes and sizes doing so many different things. And just because, as I've heard you say before, just because you're not an accountant or a lawyer doesn't mean you can't set up your own business. And you can always ask for help. There are always people who can help you with those things that you don't know about.
Exactly.
Someone else can create that pitch deck.
Actually, the way I look at it is that everything can be Googled. My husband sometimes asks me something, I'm like, just Google it. Like everything, even really complex stuff, you can Google. And I really like to self-educate. I really like to learn about things I don't know about. For example, I'm working with a blockchain startup at the moment, which is a cryptocurrency, which people say is going to overtake money. And people are like, wow, blockchain, that sounds really complex. But I've just taught myself about it, and I've Googled documents and done online courses. And, now I know quite a bit about it. I'm not an expert, but I understand the general premise. And anyone can do that, So,
well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think sometimes we try and avoid the stuff that we don't understand, whereas actually, once you start learning about it, sometimes you realise actually that was a lot simpler than I thought it was going to be, and it's just taking that step into the fear. Because I think there's so much fear surrounding being an entrepreneur. People worry so much, and it's the lack of confidence. And actually, sometimes just taking that step forward and saying, you know what, let me just have a glance at what coding is, and suddenly you realise actually some of it does make sense, and you might not be the world's expert, but you can get enough of a working knowledge that it can really come in useful.
Yeah, and coding's another thing. People say, oh, everyone needs to learn how to code, and that's simply not true. Alexis Ohanian, the founder of Reddit, he's written numerous articles about how he doesn't know how to write a line of code. Yet he's built one of the biggest content sites on the planet, and coding is just the input-output part of entrepreneurship. It's the writing, it's the artwork. But to actually get something off the ground, you don't have to be able to code.
So when people think about starting out and creating their brand, I think one of, two of the things that people worry about are creating these sets of brand values and manifestos. Have you got any tips for anyone who's trying to work out sort of where their brand sits?
Yeah, I would Google your competitors. I would have a look at what their brand messaging is, and then you can start to piece together where you want yours to sit. For this, you might look at Cosmopolitan or some other female mainstream magazines, and you might also look at some bloggers who have built brands, and then you're going to place your brand between those. But really, doing some competitor analysis can really help you sort of place your brand.
And in terms of sort of, I suppose, really brands that you really admire, is there anyone that really stands out for you? Any companies that really stand out for you?
Well, I love Tinder because they didn't exist 5 years ago, and they are they've matched 7 billion people to date, 27 million matches a day. So obviously, to grow to that size in such a short amount of time is incredible. I also love Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg, he's an amazing guy. He's a really solid guy in what his vision for Facebook and giving internet through to the world. Is just incredible, and I think Facebook is going to be a platform that we're going to see that will be have staying power.
And finally, I know a lot of ladies who are watching today will be mothers or considering balancing being a mum and being an entrepreneur. You've got a young daughter. I mean, how has your life changed since you had your daughter? How's your career changed?
Well, you know, sometimes I'm stumbling over words here. That's because I haven't slept in 2 years. Yeah, I mean, it's hard, but you just got to be even more resilient, I guess. And, you know, if you haven't slept all night and you have an interview booked, you still have to go and do the interview, and you just have to try and make it work. I say to everyone, my daughter is the hardest but the best startup I've ever done. So it is difficult, but you know, you need to have a lot of people that can help you. My husband helps a lot. You know, she has a au pair, she goes to nursery, so you need to just get those hours free in the day where you can work on your own thing.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. You've got such a busy schedule. Honestly, it's been a pleasure to have you here, Hermione. Thank you so much.